Welcome back, Buccaneers fans, to another episode of Hear the Cannons, presented by BucsGameday.com, Sports Illustrated's one and only website strictly dedicated to your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Good evening, folks. My name is Caleb Skinner at CHS Knoll here on X. Along with me, as he was in our instant reaction following the loss to the Detroit Lions, is our founder, Logan Robinson, at Logan's Twitty on X. Thank you for joining us, Logan. We've already kind of gone in depth about everything when it comes to, how that Detroit Lions loss unfolded for Tampa Bay. But we are getting some clarification on a few things. We've got press conference that you were able to attend today with head coach Todd Bowles, Baker Mayfield as well. So some insights into some things that were going on there. Baker being off a little bit that everybody was able to see. We'll touch a little bit on the officiating too. Looked like Detroit was playing a lot of man defense, something that the Buccaneers haven't really had to deal with either. So just kind of some quick hitters here. Following up on that Detroit game, tough loss for the Buccaneers. Young guys having to step up. Mike Evans obviously going down. We've got an update for him here as well, Logan. But just recapping that game a little bit, some things that I mentioned as well. You got anything to add to that and what you're able to get from Baker as well as Bowles today?
Well, of course, the biggest storyline is it's on the theme of our show today is Mike Evans, which we'll give a deeper dive into in just a minute. So, Todd mentioned about him and Mike and an update there. That was the first question asked from the media. And then further on, we got to talk with Baker Mayfield and discuss a lot of things. And you had mentioned that the bad throws, overthrows, it was asked, was it because of the defensive line that was tipping the balls? They had their hands up. And that's something that has kind of been, I wouldn't say a major issue for Baker, but it's something that has hurt him in games and getting those balls tipped down. He's not the tallest guy as well, but whenever you are being contained as much as the Detroit Lions had him in, he gave him props to those Lions. He said that they were coached very well, played in high discipline, and they did not allow him to roll out as much, couldn't pull up in the pocket. And you could see in that game it impacted him immensely. And he mentioned, a lot of things that he's got to get better on with definitely communication with the wide receivers. We did see, Tez Johnson run into Mike Evans on one route. And there was another situation later on in the game. He said, that's a miscommunication thing. I actually talked with Tez Johnson afterward in the locker room, and he owned up to it. He took that one on himself to say, hey, that was on me, rookie mistake. I got my rookie mistake. And then, him getting that touchdown later on in the game, he felt a little bit more confident and was able to get that out of his mind. But he did say there was some things that he wished he could have had back. So there was some things, and I think too, River was there on hand. I was with him today, and he said that atmosphere was very, very loud. And yes, the Bucs did go there and win last year in Detroit, but this one just seemed to be a different animal. And also, too, you're going against a team with Dan Campbell who had just lost a game.
Yeah.
That's not the ideal position you want to be in. You don't want to be the next team that a pissed off Lions team under Dan Campbell is going to be playing. So a handful of things, a variety of things, and a lot of emotional roller coasters with Mike Evans being injured in there as well. But that offense has to perform better. It needs to. They've got too much talent in order not to. Yes, I know you're dealing with some injuries, but we've seen where Josh Grizzard in this offense has been able to play at a high caliber and put up a lot of points. It was a disappointing performance from them. And, I thought, Baker Mayfield, along with Todd Bowles, were very transparent with that in their pressers, and they are very much looking forward to moving on from the Lions and getting to a rival in the Saints this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, you hate to compare it to last year's Week 7 game against the Baltimore Ravens, but that's what it kind of felt like in the moment. After a couple of days now, it doesn't necessarily feel as, bad or as hard. The Buccaneers, again, had a chance to really solidify themselves there in the NFC playoff game. Some bad injuries. You talked about Mike Evans, talk about Hassan Reddick here in a minute as well, because there's some concern going on from him as well there on the defensive side of the ball. And then, you drop a game like that, and now nobody's talking about you after receiving all this hype, so on and so forth. And then that October ended up being, pretty detrimental to the Buccaneers. They still were able to win the NFC South, make it to the playoffs, but we saw what happened there. Not having Chris Godwin really hurt them. The defense wasn't playing up to a level that they are this year. So applaud, kudos to the defense for playing well. You held the Detroit Lions under 30 points, which is, relatively good. But Jahmyr Gibbs just gashing you over and over and over again, both in the run game and the passing game, which is something that I highlighted on in an article that we have up on BucsGameday.com, either right now or coming up here shortly, on the Buccaneers struggling again to contain, running backs out of the backfield. So you guys head over to BucsGameday.com and check that out. But overall, yeah, good. Tough Detroit. They were, probably itching. Those fans are probably itching to get us back there. Be loud, bring the noise. They did. Baker, hands over his helmet.
Yeah, he admitted it. He said it was very loud. They got to do a better job communicating. And two, Todd Bowles, like you had mentioned, getting gashed by Jahmyr Gibbs. That's been the case though for this whole entire season though. Whenever you have talented running backs that can catch the ball, he admitted it. We were having way too many explosive plays allowed on that defensive side of the ball. Yes, did they get better in the game? That's great. That's fine. That's good. It's a good way to respond. But he admitted that it's been a theme throughout this entirety of the season, and it was addressed this week from Todd Bowles. So that has certainly got to get better too, because you are going to face that same type of caliber running back this upcoming weekend against Alvin Kamara with the Saints.
Yep, you've got Alvin Kamara coming up. You've got James Cook still on the schedule. Later in the year, you've got Devon Achane. So you've got plenty of guys just like that can do both pretty dang well out of the backfield. So going to need to clean that up. A lot of it has come on Servasi Dennis's shoulder. But when he's not in the game, Deion Jones possibly, or when, the scheme, the play call doesn't necessarily line up with Voss being on that guy, they've got to figure it out. The bad angle has got to be stopped. You've got to tackle in space. You can't allow that. Yeah, you held Christian McCaffrey somewhat in check, but, still, it is what it is. You're giving up this much to an imposing offense. But again, relatively all right. Good to see them get out of that relatively healthy with, Benjamin coming back, as well as Zion making his return. Some guys like that getting some more burn. Dean with his third pick, also good to see that he's continuing to have such a great season there for him personally, as well as for the team, because we needed it there in the turnover margin level. But let's get to these injuries, Logan. Some big ones for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, we all know the one with Mike Evans going down in his return from his hamstring injury, broken clavicle. Good news is it is being reported that it was a clean break, a clean fracture. So what that means is that he'll be going in for surgery. I think he's prepping for that today, maybe going in tomorrow. Logan, do you have any insight into how long that surgery, or rehab from that surgery potentially takes? Because I know it could probably be a little bit, concerning there, or a wide gap, if you will, because there is a lot of clavicle moving going on when it comes to wide receivers.
Yeah, it does. So I was doing some research earlier before we hopped on here, Caleb, and I tried to compare this to some other veteran guys in the wide receiver rooms from other NFL teams, and try to get a feel for, because Todd Bowles did say today, and it was asked, it was true, because we were trying to clarify after the game, and a lot of stuff is going on, and Todd Bowles is going to be immediately pressed with Mike Evans' injury, and asked, is he done for the season? Said he is going to be done till the later part of the season, and didn't really get full clarification until we asked today, and said, there is a possibility where he could return before even the end of the regular season, but certainly if there is a possibility, if recovery goes well for Mike, that he would be there for us if we're able to reach the playoffs. So I did some digging here and just tried to figure out kind of the timeline of what this would look like for Mike Evans compared to some other guys across the league. If we go over to Terrell Owens, he had surgery in 2008. He had a 7-week time of missed. He had a broken clavicle, and then also then played later in the postseason for the Cowboys. He returned late there, which was huge for them. He had a plate and screws done in his surgery. Go over to Randall Cobb. And now this is a long time ago, so it's something worth noting here, as well as, a lot of stuff has advanced on the medical side and everything, but you're also working with an older veteran wide receiver in Mike Evans, so healing probably takes a little bit longer. But like a guy like Randall Cobb back in 2014, he had surgery, had 7 weeks there where he had broke his clavicle. He returned in the playoffs and the divisional round for them, but noted here he had a quick return due to the plating. We don't have the complete full-on details, because I think it was reported today, of course, that he was going to be having surgery this week. We don't know if that was today. We don't have any further details on what exactly went down in that surgery, but it seems like getting a plate there with screws seems to be maybe gives you a little bit more of a quicker return for a player. You have Des Bryant too in 2015. He fractured his clavicle in week 1 and he returned in week 8. He actually re-injured it later in that year, but he had plate and screws done. That took about 6 or so weeks fully for him to get back and to able to play. So some things to monitor here. With his age is going to be a big factor here on how long he can recover. It says here, could add on another week or 2 just because of that age. And 2, like you were mentioning, Caleb, being at the wide receiver position, this is all upper body. You're not only are you, yes, you're raising your arms, and we know Mike Evans and those shots, those are usually very high pointed balls, but 2, you got to think about as blocking, being on the outside, using your arms. This is all upper body, shoulder movement, everything there. So it is, going to be very demanding for him once he does get back, if he can, this season. It is going to take a little bit of a time to get back into a groove there and hope that he's fully healthy in that regard. But the Bucs are hoping for the best. It's just going to depend on how quickly he can heal as an older player in this league, Caleb. And I know there's been a lot of discussion from this fan base. Is this it with Mike? Because I think he's been sitting on this big question on if he was going to play again next year. I think he felt very optimistic about this team, as we are now finding out, yes, this team is very good. Is this it for Mike? Or, does this make him, go back and think a little bit further of coming back for another year? Because, there has not been a contract extension, and there's a lot of question marks about the future of Mike Evans overall.
It's hard to tell, really, because you see him get injured earlier in the season, right, when he has a hamstring, and he's extremely upset, extremely PO'd. You see him taking that frustration out on something on the sidelines, going back really early, upset. When this happened, you could kind of just tell. Like, you could just tell that he knew that something was not right. You can kind of felt like, maybe all that joy that he had of returning, joy he had to finish out the season, just kind of draining out of him, like, in that single moment. So it's hard to know. Right now he's probably not even thinking about that. He's probably thinking, like, how can he help this team throughout the rest of the season? How can he rehab as good as he can to, ultimately make that decision later down the road. But it is a decision. He has been sitting on it. He's talked about it for the past couple of off seasons as well. And he's been very open about it. He's like, when I know, you guys will know, he's like, until then, it's kind of how it's going to be. And that's where he is. I mean, he's signing these 1-year deals, which we've seen them do with Levante David. That's typically they tend to do that with players who have been around the franchise for a while and who are nearing the end of their careers. I think, the 1,000 yards was weighing heavily on him too. If he would have got it again this year, maybe you see him back another year to maybe attempt that beating Jerry's ultimate record. But with that now out of the window, after going down, unless he just becomes Megatron reincarnated or Thanos or something in a playoff run. I mean, at that point, it's too late because it's out of the regular season. So, really tough for him. He's got a decision to make. Buccaneers will have a decision to make. This is why you went out and got emeka, Egbuka here in the first round for situations such as this, and it's showing. I don't think you could say it any other way. Like, it was already great to have all 3 of these guys now with Godwin and Mike being down, having emeka emerge like he has. Yes, he did not have the performance that we were hoping for on Monday night, but he was battling, probably not 100% himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Mike means so much to this team, community, Tampa. I mean, the outpouring support that he's received, I think at his foundation, you can go to his site and actually make a donation and send $13. And we've seen an outpouring amount of love and empathy sent from the fan base there because of how much he's meant. And I've just, I've moved here about 2.5 years ago, and I just, you can feel that love for number 13 when you're in Raymond James Stadium. You see all the jerseys, you see all the people engaging with us on social media of anything that he does. does, fans are going to absolutely adore it. And, Baker Mayfield says it's a hit. It hurts personally, but they've got to move on. Others have to be able to step up. And, Emeka Egbuka has been one of those players. We've seen Tez Johnson as well. Sterling Shepard has been one of those consistent players in the wide receiver room for Bake to go to. Cade Otton was one that was about the only person that was, about available for Baker there in the latter half of the game on Monday night. Someone has to step up, and I think we'll do a show next week on some trade ideas that the Bucs should certainly be interested in. It's not just even the wide receiver room, but also too on the defensive side with some things that are hurting them currently. If the Bucs are serious on making a Super Bowl run here, and Jason Light isn't the biggest to do some of those things until it's something like when you have a guy like Tom Brady and you feel like you've got this caliber of a team to take you all the way, then he will go in and grab those pieces. Mainly of those were, in the free agency options. And it is Tom Brady. Those guys are going to want to come to play for him. You don't have to ask them. You don't have to ask those guys too much. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks. Still a big divisional game upcoming this Sunday, but the trade deadline is very intriguing, and I'm looking forward to hopefully speaking on that and talking a little bit more as we go into next week with the bye week coming up.
Yeah, that's looming pretty large because that trade deadline's here in just a couple of weeks. And I want to get to this too because it's still unknown the severity of defensive end, edge, linebacker, whichever position you want to call him. Hassan Reddick going down with an ankle, knee, leg injury of some sort in that game as well against Detroit. Severity unknown. Obviously, we all know he had to be carted off the field, so it can't be too great. Has yet to be placed on IR because they are likely still awaiting those images, those tests to come back to tell them how serious of an injury it is for Reddick. And that's a possibility too, depending on how long is Reddick out, specifically if he's out for the rest of the year. I think you got to look at defensive end via the trade, market here with just 2 weeks to go and make a decision there, because I don't know if old number 43, Chris Braswell, who, is what he is at this point, is going to really cut it out for you on that defensive line on the opposite side of Yaya Diaby, especially when you're already out without a guy like a Elijah Campbell. Yeah, Elijah Roberts has been great in his stead, but you're already down one starter. Now you potentially lose another. I think you got to make a move specifically at that position. But any latest news there on Reddick other than, we're still waiting the MRI?
Yeah, Ball's kept it pretty cut and dry. There's nothing much he can really add until those MRI results come in. I know they had that on Tuesday, and we'll have to evaluate a little bit further. I would imagine we'll hear on that tomorrow on Thursday to get a real feel. But man, that'd be a big loss. Was that $14 million $14 million a 1 year deal there for Hassan Reddick, and you brought him in to get to the quarterback, which I think is at 1.5 sacks on the season, if I'm correct there on the stat line. I think Yaya Diaby's in the 4.5 range there, and Yaya's, I think, taking a big benefit of Reddick, because I'm not saying that Reddick's not had has not been beneficial to this defense and productive. Yes, he has. He's brought a lot of pressure, and we saw that in that game. I thought Reddick was having one of his best games of the season against Detroit. You and I were discussing that right off the bat. I thought that the tackles for Detroit were having some issues with Reddick and Yaya Diaby, and it just so happens, and it sucks for the Bucs that you lose Reddick early on in that game, and you don't feel too confident what you have behind Yaya and Reddick. When you point to 43 with Chris Braswell, I was going to ask Todd today, but Stroud brought it up before I did, and how confident does he feel in guys behind Reddick? And there are some things where I don't know fully. I can't fully read Todd Bowles' mind, but he does understand the severity. If you do lose Reddick, you're put into a very tough situation now moving forward, definitely depending on how long the severity of this injury goes. And the Bucs need a pass rush. They're finding some success on the inside with Elijah Roberts, who's been a breakout guy for them. Vita Vea, and I think Logan Hall is a solid piece for you for right now. But on the edge, you would like to see, where the Bucs probably we'll see this. We'll see how bad the injury is, but they're going to have to probably make a move.
Doesn't sound promising from all everything that we know about, longer MRI takes. Maybe we're trying to get another option at this point. The carting off the field, how it looked during, the play, where it happened, things of that nature is just all compiling at this point. And you're like, okay, it just doesn't seem good. So now the pressure is heating up, right? Like this was such a promising year. Hey, we're going to fight through these injuries. We're going to get these guys back. Boom, we're going to be, on our way to #1 seed in the NFC. We're going to, make a deep run. Everybody's going to be excited. Third, Lombardi trophies back in Tampa Bay. Woo! Unfortunately, that's not the case for how things go here in the city. Resilience and adversity are big words that are being used. And you've got a big one here amidst these losses that you're going to have along the defense and offense here. Again, no Bucky Irving. Already being ruled out for this one. Chris Godwin already being ruled out as well. Probably missing somebody. Luka Decky obviously still out, and then Jalen McMillan still with that neck brace on from all things that we understand and know at this point in time.
He did. I was going to say Todd did confirm again that he's still in that neck brace. We haven't spotted him in the locker room. We've not seen him. I did see Chris Godwin earlier today walking fine, and that was sort of the case when we viewed him in pregame warmups last weekend. But that I think they're wanting to give extra cushion time for definitely Godwin, and I think to us just a lot of question marks about Bucky Irving, because he's dealing with a handful of injuries that he suffered a couple weeks ago. So that's the thing. And to Godwin, man, I mean, I know that they drafted Emeka Egbuka, but they were doing that, I think, primarily maybe in caution of Mike Evans if he was going to come back for another year. Also, too, Chris Godwin, could he fully come back from that really bad injury that he was
and what sucks about that too is that fibula injury is on that same
yeah
that same way.
Yeah, and I believe a media member asked about that as well today, and Todd, it's just all about hope and recover there for Godwin, but it's put this wide receiver room, which we were covering during training camp, and it's like, wow. this room is loaded because we saw Emeka Egbuka. Sterling Shepard was having great days with Baker, and then Mike Evans, and you were hoping to see what you'd get with Chris Godwin once he became fully available for you. And Tez Johnson was having a good camp, and even some of those other practice squad guys in the wide receiver room were standing out too. And what you get with Ryan Miller as well. I'm surprised we don't see as much as Ryan Miller. I thought Ryan Miller would have stepped up a little bit more in that Lions game. I don't know if he was open or anything for Baker and such.
Well, you expected him to, right? Because it's a primetime game. Ryan Miller's got to show up at some point.
Yeah, you usually see 81 out there, and he's making splash plays for you out of nowhere. And like, oh my gosh, hey, Ryan Miller's still on this team. But that just wasn't the case. But he also is a solid wide receiver for you, and he's been a go-to guy for Baker, like you mentioned, in some of those big time moments. But now this wide receiver room, there's concerns across the board, and you just got to hope you get through Sunday with the Saints fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to, the locker room stuff and being able to see who's walking around doing what, our boy Rock was in there the other day in the locker room talking about Luke walking around, no shoes, no brace, no scooter. So hopefully good news coming from things on that side of things when it comes to the offensive line and Luka Decky. But another tough test here. I know the Saints are 1-6 right now. They're not a very good team. They're one of the favorites to have the #1 pick in the NFL draft yet again. But don't read too much into it, folks, because it is a divisional game. And the Saints have looked a little bit better, in my opinion, than what their record says. Chris Olave really having a good week last week. Spencer Rattler still trying to get things figured out there. But they, again, Saints, new year, fresh system, fresh, coaching, all that good stuff. Defense is okay. Offense is inconsistent. Ho-hum, so be it. They need to figure out a run game. Alvin Kamara is kind of aging, getting up there to be in that veteran area where he's not necessarily what the AK-47 we have become to know as. And then their rookie, who is supposed to be a pretty good guy, Keandre Miller, there in the backfield, also tore his ACL recently, so he is out. So the Saints are dealing with injuries too, just like every team. But the Buccaneers, what do they have to do to get over these injuries in this one, Logan, to be able to come away with a victory? Because it is going to be a tough matchup. I don't think this one's necessarily a give me like everyone potentially thinks it is.
Yeah, the Saints will fight with you. They'll fight with you in games, and Spencer Rattler had
literally in like the game and outside of the game.
Yeah, no, they'll literally fight with you. Baker mentioned that today. He said There's some bad shots that I've taken from this Saints team, and I just don't like them. And that's just the case. And Mike Evans would certainly attest to this as well. I wish we could. I wish this just did not happen, because I know Mike would give us some great stuff as well, because he's had his moments as well with this team. But I think getting the run game going, with splitting carries with, getting Sean Tucker going. Todd Bowles says that he did not like how much they had to use Rachaad White. And he said, the more that we have to use Rachaad White, the more of a risk that, you put him at. And you want to have Sean Tucker get more of those carries, and they're going.
I wonder if that's like a little like tap on the shoulder for Grizz. Like, hey man, let's
maybe
do this
so.
without him actually telling him. He's like, I wish we would.
Yeah. I want to get him in the game plan a little bit more too as well. But with Tucker too, I think he's more. I was putting this in the chat while we were watching the Lions game. He does get a little bit too patient in my thinking, just because he holds back a little bit beforehand. I want to see him just go run straight. That's what you're the best at. You can maybe put a move, you can try to do that, but he kind of slows down things. He's not that type of running back. He's a physical guy. He'll run over you, and he's got some speed with him as well. That's what you want to utilize him with, and I think that's something that he's got to improve on and go back to his old ways, because I think there was just too much of overthinking some things in that Lions game. Now, the Lions defense just did play very well, but they want to get the running game going a little bit more with getting Tucker involved there. And it's going to just come down to Baker Mayfield responding. I think it's just plain and simple like that. He has got to get better. Luckily, he did not have a takeaway in that game. He did have the fumble that Tristan Wirfs was able to go and fall on, but there were some balls though that the Detroit Lions could came away with and had those turnovers from him. But he's done a good job overall this season of doing that, a whole 180 from last year. But simply enough, that the throws were not great. And I think there was a lot of miscommunication all across the board. Like you would have mentioned, it was very loud in that Ford Field Stadium. They've got to do a better job because it's going to be at New Orleans. You are going to go through a similar kind of environment there. You got to make sure everybody's on the same page, certainly too, because you are going to be working with two rookie wide receivers as well. And you got some offensive linemen too. Charlie Heck had a rough game there. I think that offense just got to get back aligned, and Josh Guzard's got to get his personnel in the right spot, Caleb. But it's going to come down to Baker Mayfield and responding, which I do think all of us on here think he will. He had a bad game, rough game, ugly, nasty, but Baker has been playing at an MVP caliber game, and told that we'll see how he goes on Sunday.
Yeah, just a crazy 180 from what we've been seeing, right? Like you've been spectacular, the biggest moments, and just didn't have it. And you're going up against the Detroit secondary that just all second stringers or third stringers that you were going up against, and you couldn't capitalize on it. Yeah, Mike goes down, but even before Mike went down, you weren't able to have much success. Even throwing the ball, no matter where you were, doing a lot of screens, not testing that secondary. You got to be able to test them somehow, whether that's deep play action. But that's where the run game becomes involved, right? Rachaad constantly getting stuff, being too patient in the hole without being able to, once he finds that hole, hit it and then use, his strength and his speed in that physical combination that he has and do what he does best. And that's, hit the hole and go rather than wait around and see what happens and what unfolds. So just setting those things up are going to be big. Being able to have these wide receivers step up, Tez. We can't have the miscommunications, the lapses in knowing where you're supposed to be on the field. There was at least 2 or 3 times against Detroit with that. Now with Mike out, you're going to be asked to step up. So you are going to have to know where you need to be, not only where you need to be, but where everybody else needs to be as well. So you got to pick that up. You're going into another hostile environment inside a dome. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be loud once again. Baker, I believe he'll bounce back. I think it's just a bad Baker game. You get 1 or 2 of those a year. So hopefully that's the case. I mean, you can't afford to lose 2 in a row here right before your bye week. That second loss being 2 in a row, and that second loss being to an NFC South opponent would just be brutal heading into a bye, where it would be nice if you get this win, you head into a bye, get some of your guys back, have some of that momentum heading into the second half of the season, and you're looking good. You're going to have to shut down AK. So that'll be a test. We know Servassier Dennis is not 100%, but nobody is. He was getting taped up early in that game against Detroit. But that'll be his job. And then at that point, you got to be able to get pressure on Spencer Rattler. Are you going to be able to do that with a combination of Yaya and Chris Braswell and whoever else behind Braz at that point? Are you going to try and be more exotic like you were against Detroit? You're going to bring Levante on some blitzes. Just depends. What is Todd Bowles going to be able to cook up with a guy like Hassan Reddick down? It's going to have to be everybody on the same page in this one to pull out a victory, and it'll be really close in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, staying disciplined is going to be big too as well. No penalties. Try to clean up things there, and Alvin Kamara is Alvin Kamara. You got to prepare well for him and Dennis and this linebacker room. And when we're going to talk about trade deadline and moves that the Bucs might have to make, they did not do that in the NFL draft, man. We thought all along that was going to be their first pick in the draft, and that just wasn't the case. And they stunned everybody with getting a wide receiver, and it goes to show they did need that. And then Jason Light thought into the future there, but I think Dennis has been too much of an up and down product for you right now to feel too confident, and you want to have more of a reliability there, and depends on what kind of options are out there for you. But that linebacker room has got to be better and play better. And also too, I forgot to mention as well, but something to monitor. I don't know how severe it is. I saw him at practice. Was Antoine Winfield Jr. was also listed as a did not participate player today in practice, something that we'll be keeping a very close eye on throughout the rest of the week. I didn't see anything during the game with him or leaving the game. It must have been something that probably picked up once he got back to Tampa. But, it just keeps piling on and piling on. And, but, you feel good at what you've got with Zion and also to Jamel Dean and the shuffling that they've been doing with Benjamin Morrison. And, he's also learning as well and having his rookie moments as well. But they've been very, very, very happy with Jamel Dean this season, that Todd Bowles said. So we'll see. Got to play smart, got to play discipline, Caleb. It's always a fiery game between the Bucs and the Saints, man. And it's going to be in New Orleans, and they're just they're scrappy. They'll last with you in games, man. They will. But you want to have takeaways, and this is a game. If you're going to do it, Spencer Rattler will give it to you, and you got to think that Todd Bowles with Hassan Reddick not playing, there will be a lot of packages sent to definitely mess with Spencer Rattler in this game. He loves doing that with younger quarterbacks.
Yeah, you'll have to. It's going to be a good game. You've seen how New Orleans has come out like the past couple of times that you've played them, even though you come out with the win. They've come out on fire and you've gone down early. So you got to come out ready to go. Understand that they have nothing to lose at this point, really. They're just looking for another win on their schedule, and that'll be tough. And then, touching on the Benjamin Morrison stuff, watching him try and, these NFL rookie moments, watching him try and guard Amon-Ra St. Brown on Monday night was like,
That's
I was like, oh man.
And that's certainly very unfair to have to deal with. And then you've got to worry about Gibbs and where the hell's Gibbs at? Someone keep an eye on where the hell he's at. It's crazy with Ben Johnson. They were so successful offensively, and they can still do that to you. I thought the Bucs were able to respond like we saw, but way too many explosive plays. They've got to clean that up because it changes the game for you. It really does, and it allows for teams to build enormous momentum against you. Certainly when your offense is having its struggles, but Todd Bowles said that he addressed that with his defensive side of the ball this week, and it's something that hopefully you will see improved on Sunday, because we saw the power rankings. You've got an article. There's the power rankings of the power rankings, but it's funny how quickly this national media. And we're not national media. We're just here on boots on the ground for you in Tampa. We're local media. But the national people out there, national pundits, immediately will drop the Bucs after a game like that. I think it probably consists of Tampa. It's always, once Tampa's not doing well, going to drop them very quick. But also, too, Baker did not have a pretty game, was ugly. It was on national TV. It was on primetime TV. Everybody watched it. And then also, too, the injuries of Mike Evans, Hassan Reddick, et cetera, it drops them in there. But this team, to us and what we see on a day-to-day basis, this team is still very good, and they can be. And that was just a game that felt off kind of just all across the board. Time to get back into the groove. And luckily you're getting it. You have the chance to with an NFC. Like, this is a very important game. You lost the Lions. It is what it is. This one, you have to come away with the win. There's no excuses for it whatsoever, and that's the expectation going into Sunday.
Yeah, no ifs, ands, or buts about it this week. Last week you had that feeling. I feel like maybe others did as well, but during pregame and I was watching them, warm up and stuff, and I just had a feeling. I was just like, there's just something that doesn't feel right about this game. And sure enough, that's what happened. But you've got a chance to bounce back. You've got a chance to, finish this first half of your season on a strong note. Go out there, go on the road, beat New Orleans, get another division win, another conference win under your belt. You're sitting at 6-2 on your bye week. That's amazing. Get some of these guys back, continue that momentum, finish strong, because you've got some tough opponents after this. You've got the Bills. You've got New England, who is a train right now. They're not slowing down at all. You've got I mentioned the Bills. You've got the Falcons again. I'm missing somebody here. The Rams, you've still got to play. So you've got some tough opponents still on your list of teams. You've got Carolina there, who are showing to be pretty formidable opponents themselves there. Bryce Young now out for probably a couple of weeks with his high ankle sprain. So Andy Dalton being in there might bail you out, but you'll have Bryce probably later in the season. Miami Dolphins aren't a real team that you got to worry about there at the end of the season. I don't think by that time they'll be coachless and know their firm positioning inside the NFL draft for April of 2026. So hit this one strong. Come out here with a win. I think you can take care of business. I think it might be closer than we think, but if Baker has a good game, offense rolls, running game is strong. I think the defense gets the stops that they need when they need it. Pass rush might be a little bit of an issue, but overall, you up and down the roster, even with who you've got in place for the guys that you're missing, you should still be able to win this game. Like to see more of Cameron Johnson, more involved in the offense in different ways. If we're gonna, beat down a wide receiver, let's get him more involved, as well as Sean Tucker, as you mentioned, Logan. But I'm pretty optimistic about this one. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am. And I think Bucs fans are going to go ahead and be fine with trying not to have so many damn primetime games. Talk about bad luck with primetime games. Those are just awful. They have 2 left with the Rams on the road in SoFi. That's always a battle there with Sean McVay. And then the other one is against the Falcons, which will be at home in Raymond James Stadium. That hasn't seemed to ever be the issue if they're on primetime. Mm-hmm. It's just been a nightmare for them the last couple of years. So you got one out of the way, but there still are a couple left. If only you could just only have 1 p.m. games for the Bucs, that would be the most ideal, wouldn't it? That would be the most ideal.
Right, the ideal situation. We just want all 1 o'clock games. Don't bother putting us on prime time.
Screw it. We don't need to be at 8:25.
We don't need to be flex. We're good.
No flexing, please, because golly, you could imagine here. Let's say the Bucs beat the Saints. Patriots, Buccaneers. You could think that at least flex to a later afternoon in the 4 p.m. window. Buccaneers at the Bills. That's currently slated as a 1 p.m. kick there.
That'll change, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and then you've got a prime time matchup with the Rams right after that. Luckily, you're facing the Cardinals, which over the last 5 years, no one has even cared about them or being worried about them whatsoever. And then, it depends if the Falcons want to do anything. But after that, though, it's Saints, Falcons, Dolphins, Panthers, and that's about it. But there is a possibility where you could see some flexing happening, just depending if the Bucs don't screw anything up this weekend.
Yep, absolutely. 1 game at a time. You saw what happened last game. Go watch the film, see what you did wrong, improve it, fix it, learn from your mistakes, move on, and you're on to New Orleans. Got some injuries to continue to battle through. But overall, I think everybody should be pretty happy with where the Bucs are as they head into this matchup. And then coming out of it, if you get this victory, you're 6-2. No reason that cannon shouldn't be firing. So with that being said, guys, this has been Here the Cannons.